And
In retrospect, do you have any perspective on what needed to be healed?
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it felt like my heart got taken out of my chest, cut in half, and then this shell that was really sharp scraped the inside of my heart. Just scraped it and got rid of all of these things, these traumas from my childhood that I hadn't released. I didn't really know what they were. I mean, it had some sense, but it was the beginning. That 6-month period was the beginning of the healing for me. And I would have, if I would have known that was going to, I would have never done it ever.
My guest today is Kirsten Rudberg, and she has a fascinating story to tell. It's a story about listening to the universe's nudges and being receptive to change and adventure. It's a story about spirituality, our humanity, and the intersection of the two. This is a great story. Come join us. Kirsten, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Pat. You have no idea. Thank you for inviting me to be on your show. My story is a little embarrassing for me, certainly a tad humiliating, but something that after it happened and kind of resolved, understood that I had to go through so that I could understand the lesson that transpired because of it, or that I learned because of it. So bear in mind that it's a little bit of an embarrassing thing for me to tell this story and admit to it. All right. Around the time that I was turning 40, I was having a lot of depression and anxiety. I couldn't sleep. There was about 2 weeks where I didn't sleep and was just in general very stressed out. And I think it had to do with turning 40, but also my father and sister were coming to visit and they were going to meet my partner for the first time. I just had a lot of stress in my life. And it was the perfect storm of just for everything that happened. So my father and sister arrived in Portland. We went out to visit my partner who lived about 4 hours east. And I was just beside myself one night. I couldn't sleep. I just wanted to cry, but I couldn't. I was just exhausted. I think by that point I'd reached my breaking point. And couldn't really explain it, didn't know what was going on. And at breakfast the next morning, the 4 of us were having breakfast and I couldn't deal with it anymore. I stood up, went outside to try to collect myself, came back in, and then had this experience, which I'd never had before. It was so very strange. It felt like someone came into my body or into my brain, because I remember part of my brain thought to itself, oh my gosh, what is happening? And this is not to take away blame or what happened. I take responsibility for what happened. Something came through me and said something to my sister that was so horrible. I mean, not swear words or anything, but so horrible and mean that as it was coming out of my mouth, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, what am I saying? Why is this happening? And to say that it blew up the entire weekend, it did. I mean, my sister said, I'll never visit you again. It blew everything up. It was not a good moment in my life. And for the next 3 or 4 to 6 months, I thought that I was losing my mind. I cried and cried. I was beside myself. I was ashamed. I was humiliated. I could not figure out what had happened to me. Just that I felt this strange presence and this thing happened that I couldn't control. I was desperate for answers. But then time passed, and over the course of a couple of years, I came to understand that I was supposed to walk the Camino de Santiago a few years later. And over the course of a year and a half, I got 4 or 5 signs. They were so strange and bizarre and overt that I was supposed to do this thing. I'm not religious. I don't do things like this, but I really felt like the universe was asking me to walk the Camino de Santiago. So I quit my job. I found someone to stay in my house for the 3 months because I thought, if I do this, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to do a solitary route that's known for how physically arduous it is. I am committed to this. So I drove across the US from Portland. I parked my car in Miami, took a ship from Miami to Barcelona, and then 3 trains to southern France. So I walked a route that pilgrims normally don't walk. I walk mostly through France. And at the end, I'd walked about 500 miles. But I just started walking, not even knowing what I was doing. And, for example, on the first day, it was, I think, 28 kilometers. I hadn't been training or exercising. It was a beautiful day in Arles, which is in southern France where Van Gogh painted. I only pronounce it that way because that's the correct way to pronounce it. And I pronounced it incorrectly the entire trip until a French person taught me how to say it. I brought 1 bottle of water that day. And by, I don't know, kilometer 15, I thought I was going to die. And so I thought to myself, I am not prepared for this. I don't even know what I'm doing. This is crazy. Why am I here? But at the same time, I had this distinct sense that I was in the place that I was supposed to be, and I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. There was this sense while I was walking that it was time out of time, and that I was held in this really beautiful space of being safe. I was a woman walking alone. France had the worst weather it had in 90 years that year. It hailed on me. It snowed on me in May and June. It was mud up to sometimes my mid calves. I mean, I was covered in mud every day. It was crazy. The weather was horrible. So everybody kind of quit walking, but I was committed. So I found this small village in the middle of France, and I stayed one night. And the people were wonderful. Everything was covered with art. They served incredible food. And my knees were bothering me, so I was going to take a bus over the mountains to the next place. So, they dropped me off in town. It's like I'm sitting there in the bus. I have a backpack. All the people in town are looking at me like I'm an alien, like I'm some strange person. I'm sitting in the bus depot. I'm there for like 4 or 5 hours. I'm like, what is going on? Where is the bus? What is happening? So I turn around and look at the bus schedule in French, and I think to myself, okay, does this say it runs every day except Wednesday? Yes. Yes, it does. And it is Wednesday. So I call the people where I stayed the night before, and I said to them, the bus doesn't come today. Can I come back for the night and then redo this whole thing tomorrow? And they said, of course, come back. No problem. So I took a taxi back. And as I walked into the house, I met this woman. I'm going to call her Sarah. And Sarah was British, kind of a little bit of a sourpuss, a little bit negative, but every week or every year she walks the Camino for 2 years. And this really wonderful man, Frenchman, and we decided to all walk together. And so I decided I'm just going to walk over those mountains. My knees have rested for a day. I'll be fine. So we all walk together. We walk for a couple of days. And, some days it's beautiful. A few more days it's rainy and kind of gross. And we finally end up at another small French village. And, I'm really sensing that Sarah has, her heart's broken. There's a reason she's so negative. There's a reason that even though she's in this beautiful space with this opportunity, she's just angry about the world. She's angry about something. And, she was particularly telling me how terribly the French had treated her and how they looked down on her, and they're just awful and ugly people and all of these things. And I had the exact opposite experience. I'd never been taken care of more by complete strangers. I was in this gorgeous village, World UNESCO Heritage Site, and I stayed in this hotel because I was like, I'd spent the night in the French forest before because there was nowhere to stay. So I camped overnight, and I thought, I'm going to spend the money on a hotel. In the morning, this elderly woman said, she owned the hotel. She said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm walking the Camino. And she said, alone? And I said, yes. And she brought me this big basket of food from the kitchens and put it in my pack. I had another woman in another village with long, gorgeous gray hair, beautiful, come up to me, and she grabbed my face and cupped my face and said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm walking the Camino. And she said, alone? And I said, yes. And she said, bless you. And she just kind of held me and was, I mean, I have never been loved more in my life, I have to tell you. But that was not the experience that Sarah was having. Totally the opposite. And, at dinner that night, the three of us, the Frenchman, Sarah, and I, are sitting around eating. And she is just going on and on and on about how terrible French people are. What a terrible race of people, if they're a race, just in general, like bad, bad, bad. So I just said, gosh, that just has not been my experience. I've met so many nice people. And she flipped out. She started sobbing, jumped up with such violence from her chair that the chair flew across the room. She was so angry and enraged and started screaming at me. And the poor Frenchman was like, I'm going to go to my bedroom. And he scurried away. He was terrified. She let me have it, sobbing. And then she walked out of the room and left. And I couldn't breathe. I was just beside myself. And I sat there and I thought, I'm terrified of conflict. I'm terrified. But, I can't run away from this. I cannot run away. I'm great at running away. I can't run away. I have to be here when she comes back. I have to. And so I prayed to myself. I was like, any spirit or ancestor that's out there, please help me to deal with this, because I am terrified right now. I don't know what's going to happen. She went outside. She was gone for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then she came back in and she said, I am so sorry that I did that to you. And I flew off the handle like that. I don't know why. I think I'm exhausted. I'm just dealing with a lot. I'm going through a lot and I'm just spent and I didn't mean to do that. And I just thought, okay. And I said, listen, I have to tell you that one time I said something so horrific to my sister that it created a 50-mile wide diameter area of nuclear devastation. It was so bad that my sister didn't talk to me for about a year. And I practically almost destroyed that relationship. As well, my father thought that I was losing my mind. I said, so what you did, that was nothing. Like what just happened here was nothing compared to what I did. And she said, really? And I said, oh, yeah, yes, truly. So please don't worry about it. The Camino is supposed to be like this. Like we have breakthroughs, we have teachings, we have encounters, don't worry about it. And, you could see that she was relieved, that she felt so much better, that a load was taken off her heart. And, we did talk some more for a few more hours. She told me a lot about her childhood and about religion. She hated religion. She had a lot of pain that she was bringing on the Camino that was really, really just on the surface, and that she was trying to tamp down, but it was coming out in places. And, through her stories, I kind of understood why she was so negative and so damaged or hurt. Maybe damaged isn't the right word, but wounded, very, very wounded. And that kind of, that happened. And so the next day, the three of us continue walking, things, and we, walk for, let's say, 3 or 4 more days. And then we get to this big city, and she goes to the hostel and I stay in this other place, and we're texting each other. And she says, hey, you want to meet for lunch? Because I'm leaving tomorrow. I know you're staying a few more days, but I'd like to say goodbye to you. And I said, okay, yeah, sure. So we met for lunch, and she said, I have a gift for you. And I said, oh my gosh, that's so nice. You didn't have to. She said, no. The place where I'm staying has these. And she held up a coquilla, which is a shell. And everybody on the Camino, if you're a pilgrim walking the Camino, you have a little coquilla that you tie to your pack to let people know around you that you're walking the way. And I thought, "Oh my gosh," and I had already been walking for, gosh, like a month at that point. I had been looking for a shell forever, forever. I could not find a shell in France to save my life. So I just felt like an inauthentic pilgrim. But I looked everywhere, and she said, "Here you are. We have a ton of them in the place where I'm staying." So I drilled a hole in it, attached this little rope so you can tie it to your pack. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, that's you're so kind. Thank you so much." And so I was excited. I tied it to my pack and we had a really nice lunch. And then we said goodbye. And then I was walking by myself for a day or so. And I think on the second day, I was thinking about everything that had happened. And I thought to myself, my God, I had all these really strange messages that I was supposed to walk the Camino, like bizarre and hilarious. The God or the universe did not mess around when it told me to walk the Camino, even though it was ridiculous and absurd because I don't do things like that. But I thought to myself, my God, oh my God, I got the coquilla. I mean, it felt like a direct gift from the universe saying, good job. You are a true pilgrim. You showed up for someone. You were present for them. You took away some of their pain. And here's your gift. And not only that, but I understood that I would have only been able to take away the pain or the shame that she felt from having that explosion at me because I'd had that interaction with my sister a few years earlier. And I thought to myself, my gosh, I don't know what happened to me a few years ago, but now, because of what's happened with Sarah and the resolution that we achieved and the beautiful kind of what happened after that, I will suffer like that anytime so that I can help someone else or I can be present to someone else. And, I was explaining to someone here in Santa Fe, I went to go see a shaman here in Santa Fe. And I said to her, because this has happened to me twice in my life where I have felt something come into me and say something. And the other story is even more ridiculous of what happened. It's more of a happy story. Um, and she looked at me and she said, compassionate possession. And I said, what? And she said, compassionate possession. That's a thing. That's when something comes through you and speaks through you. It happens all the time. And I thought, okay, I didn't know that. And no one has said anything like that before. And I told other people about this, and they're like, oh, can't really explain what you're talking about. But oh my God, that is completely what happened to me. And that was like the beginning of when I started to understand that there are things happening in this world that are mysterious, that are magical, and that are absolutely miraculous. It changed my life.
Wow. That's an amazing story. I think, though, I think it's true for all of us that if we can tap into our own pain, it is a conduit towards understanding others. And I don't think without that pain that we can really be present or understanding because we don't get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I 100% give two thumbs up to everything you just said.
Well, I always say we live in a world of duality. You don't know hot until you know cold, dark until you know light. And I think that goes for the pain that everybody runs into in life at some point. That if you can embrace it and try to understand it and make sense of it somehow, you can really transmute it into something pretty wonderful. But it's not easy,
Oh, no.
nor quick.
No, I mean, I really went through a dark night of the soul after that experience with my sister. And as a matter of fact, when I had the second experience of this thing stepping into me, you know, I was standing at the counter at work working, and I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, that thing is happening again." I could feel it. And so the part of my brain that was actually me, but shunted to the side, thought, oh my goodness, this is happening again. And, with the sense of dread, because the last time everything blew up. But this second time, what happened was really magical and beautiful. And it also changed my life. It was really this incredible experience. So,
What happened?
oh, you want to know what happened? Okay.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
short story. So it's
I'm
great.
hooked on the story now. I wanna
Okay.
know what happened.
Okay. So I was at my work. It was early in the morning. I had to get there at 5:30 and the restaurant opened at 6. And so this gentleman comes in at 6:15. And I later learned that he had been sent by his college in Denver because the person who was originally supposed to go on this trip got sick a couple days before. So he got sent instead. And he was going along the Western coast to all these colleges and doing recruitment. So he's sitting at the counter. He's totally grumpy. He's reading a book. And I tried to chat to him because it's early in the morning. We're the only two people in this place. He totally will not engage with me. And I thought to myself, I'm going to make this person talk to me. So I walked up and I'm carrying the coffee and I said, oh, what are you reading? And he said, it's a book on math and logic. And then that thing came into me and I had a brief moment to think, oh my gosh, that is happening to me again. And then my mouth started saying things. And then my brain thought, I don't know how this sentence ends. I said, oh, do you think math is invented or discovered? And his jaw dropped. And then we had a great conversation. So much so that when he left, I was so sad because I thought, oh my goodness, I want to know this person. That was the best conversation I've had forever. So, I'm like sad that I didn't follow up and get his information and all this stuff because I thought we could be really good friends. Sad, sad, sad. And then he walks in the next day to the restaurant and he said, I have to tell you something. I said, oh my God, you're back. He said, I have to tell you something so bizarre. And I said, okay. And he said, 2 minutes before you walked up and you asked me that question, I had just finished 6 pages on whether math is invented or discovered. And he said, what happened yesterday has me so freaked out and it has just flabbergasted me and gobsmacked me. He said, I need to get your information. We need to know each other. And from there, I mean, he lived in Denver. From there started a gorgeous friendship that changed my life. I mean, it absolutely put me in the direction of Denver for seminary. I was looking at other places, but around that time, everyone I was meeting was from Denver. So I thought, I already know I'm getting into Iliff School of Theology because everyone I'm meeting is from Denver. And yeah, I mean, whenever it happens, it's always very disconcerting, but it always changes my life in ways that are irrevocable and also beautiful.
That's really interesting. What have you learned about compassionate possession?
Well, I'm pretty stubborn. I'm sure like the gods and universe or ancestors or whoever's out there is like, she is a tough nut to crack. And she's stubborn and she worries too much. And so I think, without these kind of, I don't know if I'd call them interruptions in my brain or kind of disruptions in my brain, I would not be on the path that I am, which is, I went to seminary, I have my podcast, I have all these other things, a lot of social justice work. But it's my understanding that compassionate possession, you can do it. It was a disruption for me. So it's like something literally invaded me and came in. So that's how I experience it. But there are lots of people that intentionally engage in it so that they can become a conduit. I mean, one of the most overt examples that I can think of is voodoo, where they have these ceremonies, chants, dancing, sacrifices, beautiful glyphs and artwork to bring the gods in. And then the god mounts someone. You don't know who the god is going to mount, but the god mounts someone like their horse and then speaks through them and dispenses wisdom, advice, listens to prayers and petitions. That's the most overt example I can think of, but it happens and has been happening for millennia in all indigenous cultures. It's just, for me, I wasn't expecting it, and I experienced it as more of an alarming situation.
How do you engage with this presence or this power? Um, have you learned any steps that allow you to step into that more easily?
Oh gosh, let's see, how do I engage with it? Like a jerk? I mean, I am so resistant and just again stubborn. I mean, I'm sure that this one over here is a stinker. I'm sure that's what they're saying. I am I don't even know how to use the right words. Um Recalcitrant. Let's say that. And so I'm gently dipping my toe in. I have a little altar that I've set up. It's really beautiful. A dear friend of mine who was also on my podcast, Ethan, he studied with the Shipibo people in Peru. He gave me this gorgeous altar cloth that is, they're famous for their healing songs. It's an embroidered healing song into the cloth. It's the most gorgeous thing you've seen. So I set up an altar, and then every once in a while I pray. I burn tobacco, I burn incense, sage, sweetgrass. I try to make it, I pray to the four directions. I make it very earth centered because I'm a panentheist. So I really do believe everything has consciousness and that the universe is co-creative. And it's not going to assist me or engage with me until I am open to having a conversation with it. Until I'm open to being humble and to saying, I want to be of service because I'm here to lift others up. We all are. I'm not special. I really want to be of service. And so I kind of am a little bit like a supplicant who goes and says, please teach me how to be of service, but I also use it in, I prayed for reconciliation for my mother and my stepfather's family while I was driving from Santa Fe to Chicago. I prayed for reconciliation. And this is a funny story. I was praying and praying and praying, and this taught me that you have to be careful with those big energies like reconciliation. So I was back home in Chicago for 2 weeks, and the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there was someone, a dear friend I hadn't talked to in 25 years. And her jaw dropped. She was like shocked. And she said, in 25 years, the first words were, "What are you doing here?" And I said, well, my stepfather just died. I'm here to help my mom. I said, what are you doing here? She said, I'm here to see your mom. And all the kids from high school dropped by to see my mother. And I said, and the second question was, why did you stop talking to me 25 years ago? From her. And I was so put on the spot. We're on the stoop, by the way. She isn't even inside the house. And we have this really deep conversation for 5 minutes. She forgave me. And now she and I are rebuilding our dear friendship. And I thought to myself, after she left that day, I laughed and I thought, oh dear, when you ask for things, those energies go out and they splash on everything that needs to be reconciled, because I didn't even know I needed to be reconciled with her. I'd forgotten about our friendship. But there she was on my stoop. The spirits and the ancestors were like, this needs to be healed. And that's what happened.
It's the old story of beware what you ask for.
Yes. Yes. Be careful what you wish for.
Now, Santa Fe is kind of a woo place. Do you think
Yes.
you're in Santa Fe for a reason?
Oh gosh. Yes. I mean, I honestly, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago, I said, there are 3 places I want to live in the world: New Orleans, Santa Fe. And everybody would stop me and say, why Santa Fe? That's so bizarre. And I thought, I don't know. I don't know. But the couple of times that I came through, one time I was driving in and my heart started humming. It was like my heart already knew in the future I was going to be living it. This energy just connected with it and it felt like home. But then I went back to Portland, and so when I started seminary, I thought to myself, it was a journey program. I'm going to, be in Denver 3 or 4 times a year. Why not move closer, get Santa Fe off my bucket list. So that's when I, rented my house out, moved to Santa Fe, and I lived here for about 8 years. And because I lived here, I moved in with my partner after about 3 years of being with him. And my rent was so low there that I was really able to do a lot of the projects and start the projects that I needed to do, like the podcast. I was able to invest some money in my podcast, my animated series. Because my rent was low, I had time to, write my web series, write a movie, like do all these creative things, start dreaming bigger for my life. If I wouldn't have had that space and that rent that was so low, I would have most likely not brought any of these ideas into fruition. And so while I am having to move away to care for my parents for a few years, I do feel like I will be back in Santa Fe eventually. I'm here now packing my life up, but it definitely doesn't feel like I'm going to be saying goodbye. But it is very woo woo. I mean, you want to talk about modalities and practices that you've never heard before for healing? It's here in Santa Fe.
There's something about New Mexico that is different. There's an energy there or something. I love New Mexico. It is so beautiful. And it's almost as if there is so much ancestral history from so many different people that it is just part of the aura of that area.
Absolutely. And I always think that being at altitude, I
Yes.
think I'm at 7,200. The air is clearer, it's crisper. There's a clarity here that's really interesting to walk through in your day. Santa Fe is definitely a city of grifters for sure. You have to be careful of who you interact with or who you give your money to or who you believe in. It's a city of dreamers. It's a city of creators. It's a city of people who really dream grand visions. I mean, look at Meow Wolf, for
Hmm.
example. It's a city where it's small enough you can connect people or meet the right people and get connected to really gorgeous things. And it's a city where you can do profound, profound healing. Uh, Santa Fe is a place, I'm sure you've heard this. Santa Fe either invites you in and embraces you, or it makes your life a living hell and you have to leave. And I thought, that's hilarious. That's a joke. But it's not. The people who come here, I think you're called here to do deep work and deep healing. It's very, very much a place for that.
Santa Fe has a lot of different energies. One of the things that I noticed there is it's an older population.
Yeah.
And that is not a high energy population.
No.
Somebody once said Santa Fe is where the literati go to die.
Oh my God. I
And I
kind of
thought,
love that.
well, it's really for part of the population, it is spot on. I mean, it attracts a lot of writers, filmmakers, a lot of very creative people, particularly people who've made it because Santa Fe has become so super expensive
Yeah.
that unless you have a ton of money, you can't live there anymore.
Absolutely. And, I spent the last year and a half that I was here after my partner and I broke up, I couldn't afford to live here. So I house sat for a year and a half. I mean, in that short time of living with him, I could no longer afford to live in Santa Fe. Rents have skyrocketed. Part of the problem is that, everyone's changed into an Airbnb. So there's just less properties.
Yeah.
And I don't blame those people for wanting to make money, but there is kind of a little bit of a housing crunch here, or a huge housing crunch. There's a lot of people. I met a barista who was like, I'm living in my car. If you hear of anything, could you please tell me? But it's very real here. There are a lot of creative, brilliant, beautiful people here that are not able to afford to live here. And I worry about Santa Fe in that way. That youthful energy, that creative energy might have to leave because it truly is becoming a playground for the rich and those who can afford it.
I think,
And, the people who have to work for them basically live on the outskirts or in the other, towns.
yeah, no, I agree with you. It's unfortunately, I think a lot of the artists who came there in the last 10 years or so or longer have left or are leaving for exactly those reasons. And you're left with events like Indian Market, which is spectacular, but
Yes.
it's really a tourist event. I mean, the prices are, again, outrageous. I think everybody should go to Indian Market. It's fabulous. But, the town gets inundated by Texans who buy up all the Indian art.
I know it is Indian market, if you can do it once in your life, is
Yes.
glorious. But, not only for the art, for the people watching, because honestly, the people watching, I mean, I hate to say this, but there are people covered in so much turquoise. I don't even know how they're standing. And you
And the
know,
boots, don't forget the boots.
the boots, I mean, there are all these wannabe cowboys and cowgirls, who have the whole they're like, this is the Santa Fe vibe. They're wearing, they're totally not cowboys in their real life, but they're like, this is how you dress in Santa Fe. Um, and they're just, I don't even know how they're able to walk around India. They're just there to show off these incredible pieces of jewelry, which is why it's kind of fun to watch the people, because it's just kind of this zany, spectacular spectator event, just to see who comes out of the woodwork.
Why do you think you're in Santa Fe? Or well, you're not now, but why do you think that you were originally drawn to Santa Fe?
I think to do some deep healing. I mean, I moved here. I told a few people after this happened, if I would have known what was going to happen when I moved to Santa Fe, I wouldn't have moved to Santa Fe. I moved
Really?
to Santa
Why?
Fe. Oh, yes. Yes. I moved to Santa Fe within 2 weeks of being here. I was sobbing every day for an hour, profound depression. I had no idea where this sorrow and grief was coming from. Some days I was in a fetal position on the floor crying. I mean, once I was screaming so loud, my neighbors texted me. They were worried about me. I was so angry at God. I mean, I was yelling, F you, God, because I was in such a bad situation. I was so angry and resentful and bitter because I was in this place with this intense grieving going on. Another time I thought I was losing my mind because I could not conceive of where this was coming from. Conceive of it. It was so horrible and devastating for me. I did 6 months of that. And then it lessened and then lessened and then lessened and finally stopped. And, when people talk to me about Santa Fe, I said, oh, yeah. Yeah, let me tell you what happened to me. I
Well,
said,
in retrospect, do you have any perspective on what needed to be healed?
oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it felt like my heart got taken out of my chest, cut in half, and then this shell that was really sharp scraped the inside of my heart, just scraped it, and got rid of all of these things, these traumas from my childhood that I hadn't released. I didn't really know what they were. I mean, it had some sense, but it was the beginning. That 6 month period was the beginning of the healing for me. And if I would have known that was I would have never done it ever. Because who wants to go through that? Who wants to feel like they're losing their mind and then cry every day and be in a fetal position? But yeah, it was just kind of this siren call beginning. It's time to begin to release and heal my trauma.
You have followed your intuition. Call it intuition, call it whatever you want. What would your advice be to others who get this intuitive sense that they need to be somewhere or do something?
Well, I'm really lucky in that the universe or God is always gives me multiple messages, and they're always super overt because again, I'm stubborn and annoying. I'm so lucky. I mean, it's like a joke amongst my friends. They just say, you never really have to know or guess where you're going to go. Because literally someone comes up to you and says, this is what you're supposed to do. It's very overt for me. So at times I do use my intuition and I use it for what I call my right path. So what that is getting into my body. I meditate every day, getting into my body, sensing the path of my life, because I do believe that, I have lived this life before. Every life I get to improve or do better things, or so I feel like it's a record kind of playing over and over. So I've lived what is the right path, and I try to sense the energy in front of me. Like, what is the direction it's going? Which way should I go? But I've really had to, not everybody's the same, first of all, okay? So I try to be careful about what I eat so I'm not clogged up, no fast food, no all that stuff, all that jazz. I meditate, and then I really, really desperately connect with the ancestors and the spirits every day. I talk to them. I mean, even if it's me like looking in the fridge for something to eat, I'm like, okay, guys, like, what do you think? What sounds good today? Because I'm also talking to my body. I'm talking to my body, those little bacteria that are actually secretly running my system and my gut. They're the ones in charge. I'm like, guys, what does it look like today? Does it look like tuna salad or does it look like some ramen? What do you think? All those things, meditation, but really get into the idea that you are co-creating this, and that those spirits, those ancestors, they want to be co-creating with you, but you have to start a conversation. And once you do that, they will find the best way to let you know your path, because it's different for everybody. They might come to you in a dream. They might actually have an audible thing, which I've had audible in my ear. I've heard things. They might, through someone else, someone coming up to you and saying, hey, have you ever thought of this? It'll happen for you in the way that it's supposed to happen, because that's the way you receive things. So, yeah.
That is fascinating. I actually think that there is no such thing as serendipity. I think when things occur, you need to pay attention. You don't know where it's going to take you, and you have to be open to it. I've lived both a very linear life and a very unlinear life. The unlinear life is so much more fun. It's so much more interesting. And if you just open yourself to possibilities, it's pretty amazing what can come your way.
Absolutely. You should always be ready for the adventure.
Yes. A woman after my own heart.
Yay!
I actually took some little online quiz earlier today, and it came up explorer. And I'm like, yeah, you got that one nailed.
Amazing. We need more explorers in the world.
Well, it's just part of my makeup. I don't know what it is. And I was thinking this the other day, that maybe one of the reasons I do like to explore so much is the fact I spent a period of my life not exploring much of anything. And it was not right for me. And I think that as a result, I've had both ends of the spectrum in terms of being very stagnant and being very curious and out there in the world. And having the contrast makes me realize I need to be out there in the world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are definitely times that I retreat from the world and I lay in bed. I do other
Yeah.
things, but it's like I want to lay in bed and read a good book or watch a show, or it's me gathering my energies, because this world is a hard place. It's challenging, it's heartbreaking. If you're a conscious person in this world at all, this world is a very hard place. And so those of us that are sensitive, that are really deeply invested in the world, that are here to make a difference or lift other people up, it's always a good idea to take some time, retreat to the cave, whatever your cave looks like, and just, I don't know, it allows you to dream bigger, because you're resting. And you never know what's going to like emerge from those periods of rest and what grand ideas you're going to get, but they're so essential to me. I agree 100%.